My name is Leah. Standing in the hallway of this house, which is now truly mine, I'm looking at my parents struggling outside the door. The front porch light clicks off, leaving them in the dark. Their vacation smiles are long gone, replaced by a look of powerlessness that I've never seen on them before. It all started when they came back from their week-long vacation. I watched from the upstairs window as they pulled into the driveway, dragging their matching luggage and joking like nothing had happened. They had no idea that their world was about to turn upside down. My father reached into his pocket and pulled out the house key. He tried to unlock the door, but nothing happened. He tried again, slower this time, jiggling the key with a confused look on his face. "Did it jam?" he muttered. My mother stepped forward and said, "Try mine." But her key didn't work either. They were locked out. As they started to look around, they noticed that the blinds were drawn, the car was gone, the porch flower pots I had planted were missing, and the doormat was new. A cold realization began to seep into their sun-warmed skin. My mother whispered, "This isn't right." They knocked on the door, first politely, then harder. My mother called through the door, her voice rising and trying to sound sweet, "Leah. Honey, open up. Let's not be dramatic." But there was no response. My father reached for his phone to call me, but the call was declined. He stared at the screen in disbelief and tried again, only to see call failed on it. My mother then pulled out her card and went to the corner coffee shop. She came back less than 5 minutes later, her face pale, holding a receipt with declined printed in bold. Panic set in. I don't understand," she stammered. My father said, low and angry, "She's punishing us." I opened the upstairs window just an inch and said, my voice calm, "I'm not punishing anyone. Just respecting the boundary you set." My mother looked up, shocked. My father snapped, "We said we didn't need you in that moment." I replied, my eyes steady, and I listened. "Now, please respect my wishes." He banged the door and shouted, "This is our house." I tilted my head slightly and said, "Check the deed." He faltered, and I closed the window quietly. As I leaned back against the window, watching them struggle, memories of my childhood came flooding back. I grew up in a small town, in a 2-story house on the outskirts. The air in spring always smelled of blooming lilacs, and I used to think that this house was my sanctuary. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were well known in the town. My father was a successful businessman, and my mother was a socialite. They had high standards and always wanted the best for their family. But there was a clear favorite in the family, my sister, Lily. Lily was 2 years older than me. She was beautiful, outgoing, and had a magnetic personality. She was the star of every family gathering, every parent-teacher conference. Her grades were perfect, and she was involved in all sorts of extracurricular activities. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. I followed the rules, did my homework without being asked, and helped around the house. I got straight A's, not because my parents demanded it, but because I hoped it would make them proud. My mother used to say, "Leah is the responsible one," but it never felt like a real compliment. My father would just nod, and I always felt like they never really saw me. I remember making breakfast every Sunday, decorating for birthdays that my parents sometimes forgot were mine. I would sit in the living room alone, watching family movies while they went out for dinners that turned into late-night outings with Lily and her boyfriend. I never complained. I convinced myself that love meant being patient and loyal. My parents would casually say, "This is your home, too, always," and I believed them. When they needed help with bills, I quietly offered to cover some. I trusted that when they said we were family, it meant me, too. But the cracks in our relationship had been forming for years. I was always an afterthought. My space in the house was often borrowed, and my name was mentioned only when they needed something from me. I held on to this house like it was the anchor of our family bond, but one day, without warning, everything changed. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had just come home from my job at the local library, carrying a stack of books in one hand and my phone in the other. As I walked into the house, I felt that something was different. My mother was sitting at the kitchen counter with her arms crossed, and my father stood behind her, his face unreadable. Lily was nowhere in sight. There was no small talk, no smile, just a suffocating silence. My mother looked up at me and said, "We don't need you anymore, Leah." I froze, thinking I had misheard her. Her voice was sharp, flat, and final. I blinked and asked, "What? What does that mean?" My father chimed in, "We think it's best if you find your own space. Give us all a little breathing room. Don't contact us for a while." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I wanted to ask why, to remind them of all the things I had done for the family. But I just stood there, clutching the stack of books, and nodded quietly. I said, "Okay." I turned around and walked out of the door, the same door I had walked through 1,000 times before. This time, it closed behind me like a final chapter. No one followed me, no one called after me. It was as if I had never belonged there. That evening, I checked my phone. It was filled with vacation photos of my parents, Lily, and her boyfriend on a beach. My mother was wearing a sun hat, and my father was holding a drink. The captions said things like "family time is the best time," but there was not a single mention of me. I didn't lash out, I didn't beg. I just stared at those photos, took a deep breath, and started thinking. I realized that love in my family had always been conditional. I had to be quiet, useful, and easy to get their attention. But I had changed. I had respected their wish for space, and they had shown me that I was replaceable. That's when I decided to take back what was mine. I remembered that 2 years ago, when my father had a business setback, I had refinanced the house. My name had been on the deed ever since, and I had been paying the mortgage bills quietly, just to keep the family afloat. They never bothered to ask about the details, they were just happy that the lights stayed on. That night, I called a locksmith I trusted. The next morning, we installed a keypad system on the house, and I updated the codes and set up remote access. Then I went to the garage and looked at my father's car, a black BMW that he was so proud of. The title was in my name. It had been a gift from my grandfather when I graduated from high school, but my father had needed it, and I had let him use it. I pulled out the paperwork, took a photo of the VIN, and contacted a local dealership. By sunset, the car was appraised and sold, and the funds were wired into my account. Next, I dealt with the bank. I had co-signed for their credit card when my mother had a medical emergency, and they couldn't get approved a loan. I didn't cancel the card outright, instead, I froze it. Transactions were declined, and access was denied. As the days passed, my parents started calling and texting me. Their messages were filled with panic and anger. They called me every name in the book and blamed me for ruining the family. But I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't need to listen to their excuses anymore. I realized that I was no longer the invisible daughter, the one who was always trying to fit into their expectations. I was free. I was finally living life on my own terms, without constantly measuring my worth against their standards. Standing here in my house, I feel a sense of peace that I haven't felt in years. I'm not trying to get back at them, I'm just done being hurt. I've given myself what they couldn't: respect, independence, and the freedom to be myself. And as my parents stand outside, still trying to understand what happened, I know that I've finally drawn a line in the sand, and I'm not going to cross it again.